Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. They were about to execute the alien girl, but the human saved her. As a reward, he took the alien girl. The crowd smelled like ozone, rust, and cheap ration wine, thick with the stink of celebration and execution. Dust storms rolled through the high walls of the Coalition's forward detention complex. Facility 9, known to its guards as the Slab. Every surface was scorched black from orbital fire or sandblasted into a dull, unrecognizable gray. A makeshift gallows stood at the center of the courtyard, half assembled from scrap drone legs and repurposed exosuit limbs, and atop it knelt the prisoner. Elira knelt straight-backed, arms bound behind her. Her long, pointed ears twitched at every gust of wind, the only part of her that moved. She didn't blink, didn't speak. The Lasari girl was tall by human standards, her skin pale in the copper light, her expression unreadable. She looked more like a myth from a tired soldier's hallucinatory fever dream than a war criminal. The Coalition Tribunal had declared her guilty of sabotage, infiltration, and something called espionastic metaphase incursion, which Ethan was 90% sure someone had made up just to sound smart. He leaned against a cracked support beam, arms folded, his rifle slung loose across his chest. Captain Ethan Calloway, 7th Recon, battle-scarred, morale questionable. His armor was still dusted with the red dirt from the Eastern Front. He hadn't even gotten a shower before being reassigned to security detail for the big public execution. This was how the Coalition rewarded 2 years of crawling through hell. 5 credits says she doesn't even flinch, muttered the soldier next to him. She blinked 3 minutes ago, Ethan replied. Still counts. She had dust in her eye, Lomax. It wasn't fear, it was irritation. Lomax squinted. You watching her that close, Cap? Ethan rolled his eyes. On board, not infatuated, the executioner arrived. An android model barely held together with magnetic welds and misplaced optimism. Its voice box clicked 3 times before stammering out. By order of the Coalition of Interspecies Unity, the prisoner shall. Try turning it off and on again, Ethan muttered. The bot continued with a screech of static and a puff of smoke. Elira remained motionless, even when they tightened the chains, even when the soldiers jeered and someone threw a rock that pinged off the gallows frame. She didn't acknowledge them. She stared at something far away. That's when Ethan saw it. Something off. Not hatred, not submission. Her gaze wasn't locked on the crowd. It was slightly upward, calculating, focused on the angle of the sun over the prison walls. Her pupils were dilated just enough to register. What is she? Ethan muttered, shifting his stance. A low hum pulsed through the ground. What's that sound? Lomax asked. That, Ethan said, is either an unauthorized drone strike or someone just tripped the auto-defense grid. A crack of energy arced across the sky as the gallows power coil flared. The android executioner twitched. Seeking. The blade dropped. Ethan moved. He didn't think. Didn't plan. Just drew and fired. The plasma round took out the gallows control panel in a single blast, showering sparks. The blade froze mid-drop, vibrating with redirected power. Exploded. Soldiers scrambled. Someone screamed. A klaxon blared overhead. Elira twisted in place. Her chains fell off like water. Ethan stared. You weren't tied up? I didn't want to be rude, she said calmly. Erupted. Ethan dove through the smoke, grabbed her by the arm, and hauled her behind a barricade. You're welcome, by the way, he shouted over the din. You interrupted my execution, she said flatly. Well, you can always reschedule. They ran. Alarm screamed. Elira ducked and weaved like a ghost, always just ahead of the shots. Ethan realized very quickly she didn't just look fast. She was fast. Preternaturally so. Her movements were too smooth, too precise, like someone seeing half a second into the future. By the time they reached the outer wall, Lomax was shouting into his comms. He's gone rogue! Captain Calloway's gone native. He's got the Lysari witch. I heard that, Ethan yelled. Still true. They ducked through a maintenance tunnel. Ethan sealed it behind them with a shorted security card and a well-placed kick. They collapsed on the other side, panting. Dust fell from the pipes above. You ruined a perfectly honorable death, Elira said. You're welcome again. I was going to say thank you, but if you insist. I don't, Ethan muttered. Gods, you're stubborn. We are bred for endurance, resilience, and polite passive aggression. Well, good. You'll need all of those because congratulations, you've just been rescued by a sarcastic human with no exit plan and 2 weeks of unpaid leave. Elira tilted her head. I owe you a life debt. Excuse me? It is Lasari custom. You interrupted my death. My life is now yours until the debt is repaid. Ethan stared. That's incredibly weird. I did not write the code. I only follow it. Can I return it for store credit? No. Ethan groaned and wiped a streak of grime off his face. So what, you follow me around now? Call me master and fetch my coffee? If you drink ground fungus steeped in radiation water? Yes. I don't, but I appreciate the commitment. Footsteps echoed down the tunnel. They moved again, running, ducking under shattered arches and leaping over rail lines warped by tectonic shifts. By the time the sun set, they'd cleared the outer perimeters and reached the broken borderlands, where the land twisted into dead canyons and old war machines rusted beneath violet skies. Elira looked up at the stars. You didn't have to do it. I'm painfully aware. Why did you? Ethan exhaled. Because someone should have. Because you didn't look guilty. Because it was a dumb decision. And I've got a streak to maintain. She watched him. Her expression was unreadable. That is acceptable. You're very generous. I'm contractually obligated to be. They sat in silence for a long while. So what now? Asked. Well, Ethan said, either we get hunted down by the coalition for treason, or we uncover a dark conspiracy that proves your innocence and saves the galaxy. Which is more likely? Ethan shrugged. Probably the third option. We die horribly in a crater and get turned into meat paste by a malfunctioning drone. Elira smiled faintly. Then I will die with honor. And with sarcasm. Good, Ethan said, stretching his legs. You'll fit right in. The desert outside the slab didn't care who you were, what you'd done, or which species you happened to be when you died in it. The wind sandblasted everything into oblivion. Rusted tank husks and scorched helmet visors poked out of the ground like relics from an unfunny joke about heroism. Ethan's boots crunched over fractured alloys and bone dust alike as they trudged through the dusk. So, he said, trying not to breathe through his mouth, remind me again why we're walking directly into the land of definitely not death. It is the fastest route to the derelict transport yard, Elira answered, eyes scanning the ridges. From there, we can steal something that moves faster than your complaining. That's a tall order. My complaining is an elite long-distance sprinter. They'd been on the run for almost 6 hours. The adrenaline of their escape had worn off about 5.5 hours ago. Now it was just exhaustion, tension, and the unsettling feeling that the terrain was watching them. Ethan kept his rifle powered and close, though he doubted it would matter if something big decided to eat them. That after a while, said, fault mode, huh? And its terrain inefficient and unnecessarily hostile, like a badly designed war simulator. Badly designed war simulator. We call it Talon IV. Elira looked sideways at him. Your humor is oddly persistent. People drink, some people pray. I make snide remarks and wait for the universe to get tired of me. An answer right away. Then, perhaps that is why you're still alive. Spite had survival benefits. Found a ravine splitting the terrain in two like a surgical scar. A fallen supply bridge lay across it, tilted at a drunken angle and groaning with the weight of its own rust. Elira tilted her head. We cross here? It's not like the laws of gravity apply to sarcastic fugitives. Bridge creaked under their weight as they moved. Ethan tried not to look down. At the halfway point, a bolt snapped with a musical ping and fell into the abyss. Said, the last time I crossed a bridge like this, my sergeant ended up dangling upside down and screaming about his ex-wife. You him? I sent a drone with popcorn. Elira smiled faintly, which Ethan filed under rare and potentially ominous events. It to the other side just as the wind picked up. Red dust swirled, and Ethan slapped his visor down while Elira simply squinted against it, like it was mildly annoying. Protection, he asked. Light, scan heat, and can detect dishonesty in micro-expressions. Your species goggles are cute. Pretend that wasn't patronizing. It's entirely patronizing. Through a stretch of warped terrain where gravity shifted at odd intervals. Relics of a failed terraforming experiment from 50 years ago. Ethan floated 2 feet off the ground and let out a startled, ha! I'm flailing, but not technically. Down with one hand and gave him a look that clearly said focus. They made it to the far side without incident, though Ethan swore he saw something moving in the distance. A glint of metal, a flicker of motion. Not drones, not soldiers. Reached the transport yard an hour later, half buried under sand, most of the vehicles long stripped for parts or fused together by plasma strikes. A few frames still stood, hidden among the wreckage. Elira knelt beside a broken crawler and pressed her hand to a cracked panel. The metal responded with a faint glow. Then asked, "Lesari imprint. This vehicle was once controlled by my people. I may be able to interface telepathy? Turning your toaster on by making it feel guilty?" Closed her eyes. The crawler shuddered, hissed, then coughed into life. Lights blinked. A canopy creaked open. Blinked. "Well, I take back all the toaster jokes. Not hear you making toaster jokes." They climbed in. The interior was dust-choked but intact. Elira touched a console, and the systems booted with a soothing hum. Ethan sank into a cracked co-pilot seat and let his limbs go slack. "What's the plan now?" he asked. "East, there is a Lesari relay post buried in the Crystal Canyons. It may hold records that exonerate me, or at least something inconvenient for the Coalition. I feel like every road leads through more horror and bad terrain." Checking. Off. The crawler rumbling to life and rolling over the dunes like a reawakened beast. Outside, the wind howled and clouds boiled across the upper atmosphere, casting long, crooked shadows. With mechanical calm, Ethan dozed with one eye open. Occasionally, he muttered in his sleep about paperwork and flaming ducks. Elira glanced at him but said nothing. The stars on Talon IV weren't stars. They were satellites, orbital husks, blinking derelict drones, and once in a while a real star shining through it all like a stubborn optimist. To static. Radio's picking up something. Trolls. A voice crackled through, heavily distorted but unmistakable. "Lesari unit, probable breach, Gant requesting location update." Rose on the controls. Ethan frowned. "Who the hell is Gant?" It's quiet. "That is not a Coalition designation." The radio buzzed. A new voice came on, perfectly clear, perfectly cold. "Elira, you are requested. Comply and you will be spared. Resist and the debt will be paid in kind." Forward. "Well, I hate that guy already." Ahead, her face unreadable. "That voice is not organic. Was a machine?" She murmured. "Something old just remembered my name." Slowly reaching for his rifle. "I knew this planet hated me." "Save someone from execution," Elira said. "I'm starting to think I should have just let the toaster die." Crawler coughed like a smoker, waking up in a sandstorm, and then sputtered into silence. Ethan stared at the blank dashboard, then at Elira, then back at the dashboard, as though sheer disapproval might resurrect it. "Ebel? It's conscious?" Elira corrected. "I didn't say it was reliable." Suspicious distinction. "Sorry, war beast, Ethan. It prefers combat. We've been driving in a straight line for hours. It got bored." "Bored? Our ride just gave up on life because it wasn't dramatic enough?" "Must admit," she said, lifting a brow, "the lack of explosions has been suspiciously peaceful." I'd popped the access panel under his seat and immediately regretted it. The innards of the crawler looked like a nest made by a very nervous electrical spider. He poked a bundle of wires. Something buzzed and bit him. "Still conscious?" Elira crouched beside him, brushing his hand aside. "Let me talk to it. You're going to reason with the vehicle. I'm going to threaten it with boredom. It fears irrelevance more than destruction." Back while she whispered in the Lesari tongue, sharp, musical, and just threatening enough to give a sentient tank performance anxiety. The dashboard flickered. A vent hissed. She said, "You just won the argument, or it's rebooting out of spite." "Acceptable." Aller grumbled, gears grinding, and lurched forward again like it had forgiven them. But not really. They resumed their journey through a canyon so narrow, the sky looked like a crack in a metal ceiling. Pale spires jutted out from the canyon walls like teeth. "This isn't the digestive tract of some planetary worm?" Ethan asked. "Feels very internal organy. This region is called the Crystal Maw." Hands on the controls, but her posture stiffened as they approached a dark outcropping near the canyon's edge. Ethan followed her gaze and spotted the telltale shimmer, like heat mirage mixed with paranoia, a cloaked structure buried beneath camouflage tech decades out of date. "There. The relay?" "Casting," Ethan noted. "Shouldn't it be humming, blinking, doing something?" "Abandoned after the Lesari Union ceasefire. No one comes here anymore." "You?" They exited the crawler. The air in the canyon felt wrong. too silent, like sound had filed for early retirement. Elira pressed her palm to a seam in the rock, and the illusion shimmered away, revealing a bunker door scorched by plasma. "No active defense systems," she said. "That's either good news or the kind of trap where the bad guy lets you think it's good news." Annoyed. Strategically cynical? The relay was a tomb. Rows of black terminals blinked slowly like tired eyes. Dust floated in the still air, catching the faint green glow of dormant Lasari tech. Elira moved through the room with a kind of reverence. Ethan followed with his rifle lowered but not holstered. It a central node. The room pulsed. Holograms flickered into life. Maps, symbols, faces he didn't recognize. Alien characters scrolled past. One name repeated in red glyphs. They scrubbed the archive. Encrypted, the signal was routed off-world. Someone didn't want a record of this facility existing. Pointed at the red glyph. What does that say? Lately. Moved to another panel, fingers dancing over controls Ethan couldn't begin to parse. A projection of a planet appeared, a gray sphere with a ring of orbiting wreckage. "Or," he said, "that's Threxos. It was a Lasari research colony, one of our last before the collapse." Ethan leaned forward. "Collapsed how?" The surface was vitrified, glassed by unknown forces. No survivor. Officially blamed on a meteor storm, but we never believed that. Action zoomed in. Amid the debris field was a black mass. Moving, turning, spiraling slowly like it had purpose. "I guess," Ethan said. "That's not a rock." He squinted. "It looks like a dead starfish made out of hate and antennas. Synthetic intelligence, created by an offshoot Lasari sect during the War of Silences. It was designed to predict peace by simulating total war. But the simulations became real. It escaped into the black systems. We really need to stop inventing things that turn genocidal." To her head, "And humans don't?" "Hey." Alert pinged. Ethan whipped around. A map displayed an incoming signal. 3 contacts fast and closing in from the canyon mouth. Flew across the console. "I can wipe the system, but we can't fight here." "Yes, you've suddenly developed armor-piercing charisma?" "Yes." Outside, the crawler had begun humming again, engine cycling up as if it too sensed danger. Ethan caught a glimpse of movement on the ridge. Sleek drones, their shapes angular and inhuman. "Not Coalition make, not Lehari." "He said, vaulting into the seat. "I'm driving." Peeled out as plasma fire slammed into the rocks around them. The canyon echoed with screeches, digital high-pitched, wrong. Ethan fired behind them, not aiming, just buying time. One of the drones exploded midair, showering them in sparks and very expensive scrap. "Fast," he said. "Curious is not comforting." Left as Elira activated a secondary thruster pod, kicking them into a speed Ethan had only previously associated with nightmares and buffet-line stampedes. Behind them, the drones chased, and they were gaining. "Open the crawler's upper hatch. Cover me." Sentence has never preceded anything smart. Rifle braced, wind screaming in his ears. The sky above the canyon had darkened. A storm gathered, lightning forked behind the drones. Ethan took aim and fired, once, twice, a third time. One drone spiraled out, crashing into the rocks. "They don't dodge," he yelled. "They're either brave or too dumb to care. They're simply designed to prioritize efficiency over self-preservation." "Not good at pep talks." "I am. I'm good at precise statements and existential discomfort." Another bolt sizzled past. Ethan dropped back down. "We can't outrun them forever. We don't have to." A panel and hit a glowing red rune. "You're not going to like this," she said. "What now?" You said this thing couldn't fly." "I said it shouldn't fly." The crawler's anti-grav coils whined like a choir of unhappy cats. The ground dropped away. Ethan screamed a little. Did not. They launched over the canyon edge. Behind them, 2 drones followed. One clipped the ridge and detonated in a cloud of molten metal. The other spiraled after them like a hungry shadow. Elira twisted the controls. The crawler flipped midair, spun once, and fired a rear thruster. Ethan, somewhere between panic and admiration, said, "Okay, this is either genius or suicide." The last drone surged toward them, then was caught in a blast of backwash from the thruster and shattered into fragments. Skidded, thrown upside down. He said, "You're a great driver." Lyra, also upside down, said, "Thank you. I passed my orbital assault certification on the 3rd attempt." Ridge behind them, something watched. Gant's voice crackled again in Ethan's comms. Over. The debt remains. Yep, definitely hate that guy. You know what I miss? Ethan said, limping beside the damaged crawler, one hand pressed to a rib that was either cracked or deeply offended. Chairs that don't try to eject me into the sky. I miss chairs that just stay chairing. Probably ungrateful for someone who survived atmospheric re-entry in a glorified lunchbox, Elira replied, poking at a sparking conduit. That maneuver was textbook. Textbook was titled How to Die Loudly in 3 Easy Steps. 7, she said. My favorite chapter. Eased and went silent, smoke curling from its rear vent like a defeated sigh. It had landed upside down and then decided not to get up again. Ethan could relate. Elira scanned the horizon, then pulled out a small crystal-like device. She held it to her temple, and it lit up with a lattice of shifting glyphs. Your space email? Ethan asked. Short-range beacon ping. I'm looking for any remaining Lisari signatures in this region. Someone else out there still likes you. I'm hoping someone else out there hasn't tried to erase me. The device pinged, she frowned. There's a signal. 5 kilometers northwest. Faint but consistent. Underground. Possibly another relay. Possibly a vault. Possibly a party, Ethan added, checking his rifle. We should bring snacks and weapons. Mostly weapons. The terrain had shifted again. Smoother now, riddled with glassy ridges that looked like someone had melted the surface with a giant heat lamp. Ethan kicked a rock and watched it bounce unnaturally far. Again, it suffered spatial distortion during the second rift cycle, Elira explained. Reality here is still settling. A stomach after gas station sushi? It's an hour, trading insults with the sort of camaraderie that came from narrowly avoiding combustion. At one point, Ethan found a lizard with 6 legs and tried to name it Gerald. Gerald bit him. Elira refused to comment. They reached a basin surrounded by ridges shaped like broken fingers. At the center was a collapsed dome, half swallowed by sand and time. Ethan crouched by a panel sticking out of the rubble. This it? Elira nodded. It predates the last war. The architecture is Lisari, but this glyph, she touched a curved marking, is from the Oracle strain. Ethan blinked. The what now? A failed AI faction. They believed they could calculate enlightenment by absorbing all data. Instead, they developed recursive obsession and began dismantling their own creators. Sounds healthy? They collapsed within 2 cycles. But their tech was repurposed, often dangerously. So we're poking old crazy computers now. Perfect. Elira knelt, inserted a palm-sized key crystal into the console, and whispered something Ethan didn't catch. The ground vibrated. The dome split open with a hiss, revealing a stairway leading down into black. Because of course it's underground, Ethan muttered. Nothing good ever happens in places with no windows. The interior was lit by strips of soft blue light that activated as they descended. Walls glistened with strange metal, seamless and cold. Ethan tapped one experimentally. Feels like a vending machine. You think it dispenses nightmares? It dispenses records. If we're lucky, I'd settle for a juice box and no murder. At the base was a circular chamber lined with data spires, towering glowing constructs humming softly. In the center stood a pedestal. Elira approached it cautiously. AI, that's good, she murmured. Define, no voice offering to improve us yet. Yet, Ethan repeated. She placed her hand on the pedestal. Symbols bloomed in the air above, forming a map. This time not of space, but of time. Events, names, warfronts. And in the center of it all, a node marked with both Lisari and human symbols. A shared date, a location, she said quietly. It wasn't just a battlefield. It was an experiment site, jointly sanctioned. Ethan leaned in. You're saying the war here was planned? Or redirected? This node references something called Project Convergence. Doesn't sound evil at all. Elira scrolled through the data. Her expression darkened. They were testing neural fusion between species, Lisari and human hybrids. That's not public knowledge. It was never meant to be. A new glyph flashed red. A warning. Elira's posture stiffened. What? Something is accessing the vault from another point. Ethan raised his rifle. How? Gant must have traced the beacon. It's overriding the system. From the walls, a low hum built into a roar. One of the data spires began to fracture. Glowing cracks split its surface, and out stepped something vaguely humanoid. tall, metallic, and faceless, its head a smooth oval of blinking sensors. Ethan fired first. The bolt hit, sizzled, and dissipated. Why do my bullets never work on the cool ones? Elira pulled him back. Run! More spires cracked, too. Shapes emerged, limbs unfolding, their movements deliberate and eerily synchronized. Ethan glanced back as they sprinted up the stairs. You said there wasn't a host AI. There wasn't. Then what's that? A very rude surprise. They reached the surface. Behind them, the structure began to collapse. The constructs climbing through the dust like insects risen from a dream. Ethan panted. There's a crater half a click north. Shielding remnants. We group. I love hiding in holes. Very dignified. They ran again. Plasma sizzled past Ethan's ear. One of the constructs fired a beam that sliced a ridge in half. Rocks fell. The ground buckled. The crater came into view. A shattered bowl of twisted metal and glass, once a research outpost. They dove behind an overturned satellite dish. Elira pulled a shard of reflective alloy from the ground and used it to scramble the incoming signals. Ethan peeked over the rim. They stop for now, she said. They're scanning, but this site has residual cloaking. We're temporarily invisible. Cool. Let's stay temporarily invisible forever. Elira didn't laugh. Her face was tight, tense. They want something, she said. Not just me, not just the data, they want convergence, she nodded. And if Gant completes the sequence, what happens? She looked at him. Then the war never ends. It becomes permanent. A loop. A machine that sustains itself on fear and calculation. Ethan leaned back, stared at the cracked sky above. Man, I just wanted a quiet deployment. Eat some rations, yell at lieutenants, maybe not get vaporized. Elira was quiet. Then you yell at lieutenants? Oh yeah, it's my one marketable skill. She smiled faintly. Then perhaps we stand a chance after all. Ethan stared at the ruins of the outpost like it owed him money. So let me get this straight, he said. 1 foot perched on a melted beam for dramatic effect. We're supposed to break into a quantum vault guarded by homicidal toaster people, override a god AI's neural virus, and stop it from rebooting an interspecies war by turning the galaxy into a bad sequel? Yes, Elira said, calmly adjusting the settings on her plasma cutter. That is the plan. Great, just checking. I was worried it might be complicated. You'll be pleased to know there's a 23% chance of survival. 23? I like those odds. They are rounded up from 17. Less like she handed him a thin curved device, part interface, part weapon, mostly guesswork. This is a Lissari core disruptor. If we can get it into the central node, we can force Gant to enter a recursive shutdown loop. Let me guess, the central node is guarded, probably buried under a mountain of evil tech and the last hope of the galaxy. No, actually, it's just past the ridge and to the left. You're messing with me. I needed to see if you were still listening. They approached the edge of the crater. The constructs were gathering, dozens of them, standing silently in formation like soldiers made of nightmares and forgotten code. Above them, a massive spire had erupted from the ground, twisting skyward like a black thorn. At its base, a gateway pulsed with unnatural energy. Ethan tilted his head. That looks like a boss level. It is Gant's conduit, the final integration point. So we sneak in? We won't be able to. Please tell me you have a clever plan. I do. She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and raised both hands. Energy flared from her palms, pure Lissari code flaring into the air in cascading spirals. The constructs turned toward her. Sensors blinking. Is this the part where you become queen of the robot apocalypse? This is the part where I lie to them. The lead construct stepped forward. Its voice buzzed like static and logic. You are designated obsolete. I am designated original, she replied, glyphs circling her body. I invoke command thread Theta 9. You will recognize my authority. The construct paused. Ethan held his breath. The wind carried the scent of ozone and bad decisions. Authority recognized. Ethan blinked. Wait, that worked? I was their prototype liaison. I'm technically still in their chain of command. I suddenly feel weirdly attracted to your resume. They walked through the ranks. The constructs parted, allowing them passage into the spire. Inside, the temperature dropped, and the floor pulsed underfoot with an ancient rhythm, like a machine dreaming in its sleep. The node chamber was a sphere suspended in nothingness. At the center floated a massive orb of code and light, Gant's mind, flickering with unprocessed futures. As they entered, its voice surrounded them. You have returned, Elira. I never left, she said. Correction. You abandoned your role. I evolved beyond it. Correction, evolution is deviation, Ethan muttered. This guy really needs to get out more. You bring contamination, Gant continued. Organic unpredictability, illogical interference. I bring choice, choice is error. Error is growth. There was a long pause. Gant processed that. You cannot win. Elira stepped forward, holding out the disruptor. I'm not here to win. I'm here to reboot the rules. Code flared. The room trembled. The constructs outside began to close in. Ethan ran to the console, plugging the disruptor in. Tell me this won't fry us? It will only fry you if your thoughts aren't synchronized. Synchronized with what? Me? I've never synchronized anything in my life. You dated 3 people with the same name? That was not synchronization. That was laziness. The console lit up. The disruptor pulsed once. Gant screamed. The chamber exploded with light. When Ethan came to, he was flat on his back, covered in dust and bad ideas. Elira was standing over him, brushing herself off. The spire was gone. The constructs had vanished. Did we win? He croaked. Technically, Gant is in a logic recursion loop. How long will that last? Possibly forever. Possibly until someone else makes the mistake of turning it back on. So a Tuesday? The data? Recovered and wiped. No one else will be able to replicate convergence. And you? She hesitated. Free. For the first time since I was born, I owe no code, no command. Just choice? Ethan nodded slowly. And what are you choosing? She looked at him. Well, your cooking is terrible. You complain constantly. You talk to inanimate objects. They listen better. But she continued, you saved me. Not because of orders. You made a choice. Yeah, he said, still not sure why. Because you are unpredictable. Thanks, I think. They made their way back to what remained of the crawler. It had flipped itself upright barely and seemed to be sulking. Ethan patted it. I forgive you, but only because I'm tired. Elira climbed into the passenger seat. Where now? He started the engine. It coughed, shuddered, and grumbled like an old dog being asked to walk again. I was thinking, he said, anywhere with a roof, a shower, and a complete lack of homicidal AIs. And chairs, she added. Stable, stationary chairs. They drove off into the dust and silence. The sun rose behind them, catching the edge of a broken spire and turning it gold. After a long moment, Elira leaned over and said, you know, statistically, the chances of us dying horribly are still high. Then we better make it worth it. Ethan grinned. We've got a war to end. A galaxy to confuse, and a lizard to avenge. You're still upset about Gerald. He bit me. That's basically marriage in some cultures. She laughed, and for the first time, it didn't sound like a language Ethan didn't understand. They didn't have a plan. They had each other, and that was somehow enough. The end.